In our skin, we have layers of tissue, and then each layers have different combination of cells. Sun UV is affecting our cells and we're developing skin cancers is because UV is damaging the DNA of those cells.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another Questiony Q&A. Today we're joined by Zeynep to discuss all things cancer. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, thank you for joining my question and answer in Questiony. And I'm happy to answer your cancer related questions as much as I can. Looking forward to.
Yeah, that's great. So please be advised that some topics mentioned within this video might be distressing for viewers, so there's a trigger warning of discussions of cancer. Without further ado, we'll get started with our first question. What is melanoma in simple terms?
Melanoma is one type of skin cancer, but the starting point of the cancer is from the melanocyte, which is the pigment cells of the skin. So in our skin, we have layers of tissue, and then each layers have different combination of cells. Melanocytes are the one type of those cells, and they have the pigments of our skin, which is the melanin. And then this is why we have different colors, because our melanocytes are producing different level of pigment. And if those cells became cancerous, we end up having melanoma, which we call skin cancer.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that one. So the next question here says, what is meant by the term non-melanoma skin cancer?
So non-melanoma skin cancer is the type of skin cancer starting from the cells of the skin, not melanocytes. So in our skin, we have different types of cells, epidermis cells, like basal cells or squamous cells. So if the cancer is starting from the basal cells, for example, in the epidermis, not from the melanocytes, we call them non-melanoma skin cancer.
Yeah, thank you for that one. So the next question here is all skin cancer operable?
Most of them, yes. Most of the skin cancers are operable, but not all of them, sadly, because operation depends on the location, size, and the metastasis level of the cancer. So if skin cancer, if melanoma grown enough and metastasized to other part of the body, even though maybe you can locally take one tumor from the skin, but the ones that spread across the body to different organs, they might not be operable, based on where they are located. For that, then we need different treatments or maybe combinations of operation and the other type of treatments like chemotherapy and radiotherapy. So it depends on the size and the growth and the metastasis stage of melanoma. Operation could be only option, good only option, or maybe just part of a big treatment scope.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you. So the next question here is, how quickly can unprotected exposure to the sun develop into skin cancer?
That's a good question, because sun is something that we, inevitably expose ourselves in some regions, maybe more than the others. This is kind of a long-term effect, actually. But in some conditions, like if we happen to have a heavy sunburn for some reasons, maybe an accident or a mistake, this could kind of increase the risk, obviously. This could trigger the cells developing DNA damage faster and more dramatically at a given time. And then this could kick some cells to become cancerous. Because why actually sun UV is affecting our cells and we're developing skin cancers is because UV is damaging the DNA of those cells. In a long-term accumulation, it takes time for cells to accumulate a serious damage and then become cancer. But all of a sudden, if we are exposing ourselves to sunburns, or if we are having some other skin conditions that making our skins extra fragile, or tanning salons, this kind of extra UV exposure that's sadly available, these things could make it a bit faster. But usually it's a long-term accumulative problem.
Yeah, thank you for that. So it links into our next question here, and it says, what effects do the best sunscreens have to prevent UV damage?
So sunscreens are a good protection for the UV damage, obviously. And they have molecules that prevents the penetration of UVA and UVB. So when we purchase those products, it's good to look at the high spectrum, ideally the SPF 50, and including the UVA and UVB, because these two rays are actually known to be damaging our DNA in our skin cells.
That's really good insight, thank you. So the next question here is, are certain parts of the body more likely to develop skin cancer?
The answer is yes. Some of our parts of the body could develop more than the others because naturally, in average, some parts of our skin is more exposed to the sunlight than others, like face, neck, hands, or the back of the body, or maybe the chest area. Obviously, this could be depends on some regional differences, how people are dressing up, how much sun is there, and how much someone is actually having the sun exposure, laying under the sun, maybe in the beaches. So this could really slightly changes from people to people. But some parts, like face, for example, like there's no coverage usually, and we get more exposure. So that area could have more skin cancer. And also, interestingly, even though we often talk about our skin as a ubiquitous organ, like it's all same, out of your body, but actually that's not biologically true, because the formation of the cells content and the kind of a transcriptional profile of those cells in different parts of the body actually not exactly same. So this is why maybe we are having more risk developing cancer on our face, not only because our face is more exposed to sun, but those cells are also not exactly same as the other part of the body. So it's not 100% clear. Yes, we know some parts have more than the others because they are more exposed to sun. But it's not quite clear whether that's the only reason. It could be due to some diversity in the cell types and their profile as well. Yeah,
that's a great answer. Thank you. The next question here is moving on to the research. It says, what is the main focus of research in the fight against skin cancer?
So usually, this is, I think, a general answer for other types of cancer as well. But for skin cancer, at least, we can observe the early signs, because usually melanoma will start giving a nevi on our skin. And we might have nevis, from the young ages, but it's good to observe them. So every so on, check on them, whether they are changing, whether they are staying stable. And if we start feeling some itchiness in the nevis, not kind of, every so on, maybe once, that's fine. But like if you are feeling those things continuously, and then you see your nevi is growing or becoming reddish, so you can observe these signs, and these are really good indications for the early detection. And early detection is actually quite important for the cancer research, skin cancer research as well, in medicine and research. Obviously, research has more angles, like trying to understand the mechanism, trying to understand the behavior, why it spreads, the way that it spreads, why it has certain preference. But early detection is one of the main goals of the cancer research in general, because early detection really helps to prevent the later stages and then make the treatments, chemotherapy or radiotherapy, more efficient. Because at a certain stage, when it's spread, if it is quite late, then all these treatments are not really being functional and helpful, and just making maybe the individual's life even more unbearable. But early detection, prevention, because at least the current knowledge we have for the cancer, including skin cancer, gives us some preventative approaches. Not quite, clear maybe, but we know, if we don't smoke, if we don't consume alcohol regularly, if we control our diet, if we control how much sun exposure we are having, if we use sunscreen, for example, we know these things could help. And being more conscious and aware of those things and actually taking them serious is quite important. And I feel like research is trying to make them quite clear and certain, so then we can actually enforce maybe more. And the therapy is obviously part of the research, once the disease appear, because human life is getting also longer. And this is one also outcome of why we have certain diseases more, because we kind of start living longer. And then can we prevent the diseases starting is also really good. But also after it's started, so how efficient our therapies could be, that's another angle of the research. And these are all coming down to the fundamental understanding of the problem and the healthy version of those organs and the cells. So if we don't know why the certain cell works in a certain way in the healthy setting, it's not going to be easy to understand the disease setting, which is the disrupted version of the healthy setting. So it's really important to understand fundamental biology of any cell, including skin cells, so then we can actually build up therapies. So just to give a summary at the end for that answer, early diagnosis, prevention, and enhancing the therapies is main goal of cancer research, including skin cancer research. And this all tied up to understanding the fundamental biology of it.
Yeah, that was an excellent explanation, thank you. So we'll move on to our next question here, and it says, are certain skin colours more predisposed to developing skin cancer?
Yes, that's true, because some skin colors could be more prone due to their melanin content, which is the pigment that I mentioned, melanocytes, the pigment producing cells produces. So depends on the melanin level, we have a skin color. So pale skins or fair skinned or like light colors, we can call them, they have less melanin content. So melanin is the actually what protects our skin from the sun exposure from the UV. So the more melanin you have, the more protected you are biologically by default. So this is why African population, Black people, they have less skin cancer, less melanoma compared to the white in the rest of the world, because their melanin content is protecting their cells to have DNA damage, because melanin is absorbing that UV and keeping in the molecule. If someone with a white skin goes under the sun together with someone has a more pigmented black skin, so they will have a different outcome, because the melanin in the black skin will protect the skin from developing burns and DNA damage. On the other hand, white skin will start burning, which is going to cause DNA damage in the cell. So this is why the melanin content of the skins are generating this diversity for, some colors develop more melanoma than others.
Yeah, that was really interesting. Thank you. So the next question here is, are there links between skin cancer and other cancer types?
Some statistics say that people who have skin cancer later, they might develop some certain cancers more, like breast and lung. Saying that this is not a clear-cut correlation, this is, I feel, like a statistical observation, but it's not easy to understand these settings because you need a comparison and a controlled experimental setting, which is not happening. But that link could be due to the genetic background of that individual. So why someone has a cancer in the first place, it's due to their genetic information, the mutations they accumulated. And if, someone having a certain level of mutation accumulation already in their body, this could make their other organs and the cells more susceptible to go through the similar pathway of cancer and develop another type of cancer. But it doesn't mean if you have a skin cancer, then you will have another cancer in the future. But there are some statistical links that there's a, susceptibility of people developing certain type of cancer if they have one of them. But that's probably due to some genetic mutations, which several cancers could share some pathways. So some genes will be mutated in different types of cancers in the same way. So that's actually not really a link between cancer types, but it's a link what makes cancer in the beginning in terms of genetic mutation.
So linking on, our next question here says, can skin cancer develop from other conditions?
It can, yes. If we are having some traumatic kind of burns in our skin, or some infectious situations that our skins became fragile to external exposure, or some diseases like skin diseases, pigment diseases, for example, some people could have a problem in their melanin production, not cancer related, but another mutation related. This could kind of increase their risk of developing skin cancer because their skin in general became more fragile to external damages. But it's not like if you have this disease, then you will have the skin cancer as well. It's not like straight link like that, but some conditions could make the cells more fragile to the sun exposure, obviously, and then they could have more risk of developing it.
So the next question here is it common for skin cancer to return in patients?
I don't know, actually, it is common, like whether it's a number that we can say common. But it's definitely could happen, has happened. So for example, if someone has several nevi, and then some of them maybe will become cancerous. So also not all nevi is a cancer. So we should be careful maybe saying that. So I don't want people to get scared because they have nevis on their body. I have several of them. But some of them might be converting to cancerous. So you might have one and get treatment, and maybe another one will do the same or not. So that's kind of possible. But also cancer treatment is something, a long-term treatment, because once we have those uncontrolled cells, like cancer cells in our body, it's not easy to 100% clear out them in the beginning. So this is why we need to get checked regularly whether, we are clean or whether some remained maybe, and then they go to senescence a little bit. They can, sleep a little bit and then awaken later, because cancer cells are dynamic and evolving cells. So they can watch out what is going on around and then respond accordingly. This is why in therapies we have cancer cells going through kind of a sleep mode, which they are protecting themselves from the treatment, and then we think it's done, and then they might awaken later. So this is why we might see that some patients are having it back, maybe from the same one in the beginning because there were some cells remained, or we might see that person is having another location in their skin that becoming cancerous in the future. Doesn't mean doesn't mean like it will be, but obviously it's a possibility, and there are observations.
So our final question on today's Q&A is, how does skin cancer develop to become fatal?
Good question. So skin actually, because it's an external organ, if it is detected early, it's one of the easy and good treatable cancers in a way that, because the tumor is going to grow a bit externally and then internally as well, but we can kind of notice it maybe easier than other type of cancers. But one sad side of melanoma is that it has a high level of metastatic behavior, which is the spread to other organs in the body. So some cancers, they more like staying in their regions. So they metastasize. Every cancer could metastasize, but they have a little bit of, slowness maybe. But melanoma is aggressive and it can metastasize fast to other organs. And one of the preference of melanoma to metastasize is brain. And brain is one of the hardest area to treat because we have skull, brain is in a limited space, but also because of its function and the way it is, it's not easy to just cut out some region from the brain and take it or like operate it. So because it's all coordinating rest of our body, there are some regions it's quite hard to touch in the brain. And melanoma, when it is kind of metastasized to this kind of organs, then it becomes quite damaging and could actually kill in that way. And then if it kind of spreads other organs, obviously then the problem becoming more bigger than just the skin. And then usually it's the late detection is actually causing those problems. Like it metastasizes and then people realize there's something wrong. In that way, it could be lethal.